The American dream. What does it mean? Is it melting away? Is it dead? Has it ever existed? The American dream has been a reality for some, but little more than a myth for too many. Is it about material possessions? A home with a white picket fence, a new car every couple years, a fat bank account. Perhaps the American dream is something deeper. Freedom to speak, freedom to worship, freedom to love whomever you choose, the freedom to rise as high as your hard work and God-given talents provide. The freedom to elect our leaders, and the freedom to reflect on those choices, sometimes in 140 characters or less. The American dream. Its beauty is in the eye of the beholder. What does the American dream mean to those too often judged by the color of their skin and not the content of their character? Please stand if you're representing a minority-serving institution here today, or if you're a graduate of an MSI. Let's give them a round of applause, folks. We are so delighted that you're with us for this convening. You have been some of the most effective engines of upward mobility, and we are honored by your presence. What does the American dream mean to the people of an island territory virtually wiped off the map and still waiting for adequate aid from their fellow Americans? Please join me in welcoming our Alliance representative from Puerto Rico, Milagritos Gonzalez. Where are you? Our hearts are broken for you. We want to know how we can help. How can we understand what the American dream means to those who were native people on these lands before others came to claim them? Some of our friends from the tribal colleges are here for the first time in our annual convening. Will they please stand up and be recognized? Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. We're looking forward to doing great work in Montana with them. And what does the American dream mean to a young woman, perhaps first in her family to reach high for higher education, but told to endure a year or more of non-credit classes based on the vagaries of a cheap placement exam and no preparation? What about the older man still pursuing his dream, but cannot receive college credit for the skills he's gained in life? Or the working mother, struggling to try to balance work and school, trying to get ahead, earn a little more, but swallowed up by an ever-changing schedule all over the map, and faculty unwilling to change when they teach and when they're needed most. If you were a first generation college student, if you were a returning adult college student, if you were a working student who persevered to graduation day, stand up. I thought so. I thought so. You strengthen us by those perspectives, those diverse perspectives, the intentional inclusiveness of this now 44-member alliance makes us stronger than ever before. So let me take this opportunity to recognize our newest members of the Alliance. The City University of New York, where are you, CUNY? The State of Alabama, and our newest member, the Complete College Arizona Consortium. Where are you, Pima and Maricopa? All right, there you go. We're so happy to have you. You strengthen our movement. And I want to say a special thank you to our friends from Louisiana, Lots of colleges are represented here today. We wanted to make the most of our location, and I want to especially thank them for this beautiful late November weather. So I'll give you the credit for that. Let's give Louisiana a round of applause. Finally, I want to recognize teams from some of the most significant metro areas in our country. Boston, Chicago, Dayton, Denver, Philadelphia, Racine, Shasta County, California are all here, representing their cities well. Remarkable diversity, engines of great economic power, and I think the next frontier in college completion work. Welcome to you all. This annual convening, our 8th, is called Access to Their American Dreams. Access to Their American Dreams. If you've been paying attention over the last several months from CCA's communications, you'll realize that theme has evolved over time. Because it's clear to me now there is no single idea of what the American dream is. It depends on who you ask. And it is inappropriate to apply some privileged perspective on it. Our theme also begins with the word access, a very frequently used term in higher education. But it leaves for our imagination words to precede it. So what about access to the American dream? Some say the word restore should come before access, but that makes no sense to me, restoring access to the American dream when you've never known it. Others say we should ensure access to their American dreams, but that too rings hollow because of decades of broken promises. Case in point. Were we really ensuring access to higher education when all millions of students received were non-credit, leading nowhere, warmed over high school classes at college costs? I don't think so. So let me be clear. Complete College America intends to expand access to their American dreams. Expand it. Double down on eliminating achievement gaps in this country by providing equity of opportunity for all students, especially those most often left behind. This must become our mission and your mission because the future of our country depends upon it. To do so requires two things. First, the American dream must be real. I believe it's real, but I also believe it has been unrealized by too many. So how do I know it's real? I'll leave the data to our brilliant keynote speaker who'll come out in a few moments. But I do want to observe that however imperfect the American dream may be, we are still the beacon of opportunity to the world. In America, it's still possible to work hard, play by the rules, and get ahead. But it's only possible if you graduate from college. College graduates earn 98% more per hour than non-graduates, 98%. And only 2% of them are counted now among our nation's unemployed. Not graduating costs you, on average, $1 million in lost income over your lifetime. So there's no doubt that college is worth the cost. You're more likely to be healthy. You're more likely to be happy, to stay married, and I hope those two are connected, to be good parents, and to be active voters in our democracy. And God knows we need more of that. These are all key attributes of anyone's definition of the American dream. So that's all the good news. College, more than ever, is a path to a decent American life. Here's the bad. Structural inequalities now threaten access to the American dream. Believe it or not, a college student in Canada is now twice as likely to achieve what we consider the American dream than those in this country. Twice as likely, as you measure that from the ability to move from the bottom 20% of income to the highest 20%. And if that's not bad enough, adding insult to injury, they also have Justin Trudeau. Again, I'll defer to the expertise of our keynote speaker today, but allow me to frame this entirety of the annual convening by focusing most on the second requirement to fulfill this new mission I'm challenging you to accept. If the American dream, however endangered, is real and a virtuous ideal, then how do we expand access to it? First, let me offer a brief history lesson. Before the American dream term was coined in the early 20th century, we've taken collective action already as a country to strengthen our fundamental commitment to upward mobility. We created free elementary and secondary education. We saw the need for a well-educated populace to meet the skill demands of that time. In the depths of the Great Depression, we did it again. We created the New Deal and provided protections for the unemployed through insurance that were unprecedented. We also ensured the elderly and the disabled would not live in abject poverty and illness, obviously strengthening our commitment to the American dream. And then again, after World War II, we made probably the most significant investment in Americans ever in this country's history, the GI Bill. Free tuition for returning soldiers. Free tuition for those who had never even imagined going to college. And 7 million of them took us up on the offer. We also added to that, creating the VA loan program to expand home ownership in this country, another cornerstone of the American dream. Now, historians will tell you that college presidents of that time, after World War II, weren't real excited about the idea of all these soldiers coming in, these former soldiers coming into their classrooms. They thought, actually, that those soldiers would bring down academic standards. Heard that argument before? In fact, the president of the University of Chicago said that his hallowed institution would become a hobo jungle. Now, I'm not sure exactly when the term ivory tower was coined, but if I had to bet, it was probably around 1945. In the 1960s, we doubled down again, created Medicare, the Pell Grant, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act to protect and enhance American life and opportunity. So see, time and again, through collective action and investment, we have expanded access to the American dream, especially when we consider it to be threatened. Previous leaders understood that to preserve the magnificence of America, it was essential to preserve upward mobility. We had to continue to be the land of opportunity. And that is true today. But can we say today that we have the same collective commitment to expanding access to the American dream? I wonder. It seems doubtful to me that we have that commitment when since 2008 we have cut public support per student by 18% in this country. It seems doubtful to me that we have that commitment when children born in this country or those who come here as infants are denied access to higher education simply because of the immigration status of their families. It seems doubtful to me that as I speak, steps are being taken to remove the deduction for student loan interest. How can we say that we are as committed today? All this nonsense is going on at the same time that completing college is more important than ever, more associated with achieving the American dream than ever before in our history. How can this be? And I got to tell you, I am sick to death of politicians talking about the virtues of widespread college completion as if it is a widely understood public good, but funding it as if it's only a private benefit. It can't be both, folks. It's one or the other. And we need to hold them accountable for that. Now, I know that was pretty dark, but all is not lost. All I have to do is look around. This annual convening is overflowing with reasons to be optimistic, overflowing with hope, including elected officials, faculty members, administrators, from state capitals, from campuses, from systems, all working now to expand access to the American dream. And I can say with confidence, access is being expanded to the Tennessee dream, to the Georgia dream, to the CUNY dream, to the Montana dream, to the West Virginia dream, to the Hawaii dream, and many, many more. I know this because they have committed themselves. They are owning this agenda. They are adopting these game-changer strategies, and they are accepting this vital new mission. And so much must each one of you. Yesterday, you learned firsthand from some of the most significant reformers in our country. Today and tomorrow, you'll be challenged to think more deeply, act with greater urgency, and utilize powerful new tools and advancing strategies to accelerate the change. But understand this. CCA has been at this for 8 years. And for 8 years, we have been pleading for you to own the failures of traditional remediation. We have been begging you to accept that college algebra isn't the appropriate math for everyone. We've pleaded with you to acknowledge that most students can handle and do well taking more credits. And we've asked you to embrace supports to speed students on pathways. We've shown you the data, we've shown you the proven results, and we'll keep doing that. We've even created new scaling standards right there before you on the table that capture what we've learned and how best to do this work. But honestly, folks, if you're still providing remediation in a traditional stacked, non-credit way, you're on the wrong side of history. If you're still making all students survive college algebra when the best and brightest mathematicians in this country across the board say that's nonsense, I don't know what to say. If you're unwilling to nudge students to take enough credits to have a chance to graduate on time, then you've rejected the fundamental principle behind Complete College America. Time is the enemy of college completion. And if eliminating achievement gaps is still just a nice thing to do in your mission and not a must-do, then I will tell you this: you will never, ever, ever accomplish your college completion goals. You won't, and you're not serious about this work. But thank you. But I don't think you'd be here if any of that was true. By virtue of your membership in this alliance and your participation and attendance in this annual convening, you've already demonstrated your commitment. But are you ready now to commit yourself to all of this in a new, bolder context? Are you prepared to accept expanding access to their American dreams now completely depends on what you do when you leave New Orleans? Look, the cavalry is not coming over the hill, folks. You are the cavalry. CCA and our wonderful fellows will be happy to serve as your advisors, your reinforcers, but you've got to get on a horse. This time, in this day and age, and for the foreseeable future, we must not expect government to come to our aid, to buttress the American dream. Quite contrary, based on recent evidence, I fear. So, if America is to fulfill the ideal of being that land of opportunity for the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free, it's now up to you. Thus far, that ideal has fallen short for too many people, leaving far too many not with an American dream, but just simply unfulfilled dreams. I realize this is a tough wake-up call this morning. I know this is a challenging call to action. But before me in this room is a room overflowing with hope and commitment. I can feel it. I know it. That's why you're here. And so that makes me optimistic. My optimism, though, in this moment, it doesn't just come from your wonderful work and commitment, but also based on my own life experiences. So let me tell you about me. Larry Sugar had an American dream. He was born in a dusty border town called Mission, Texas, in the 1950s. He did not have an easy life. His father was an alcoholic. His mother suffered from paranoia, schizophrenia. And Larry himself contracted a chronic intestinal ailment that required treatment at the Mayo Clinic. To escape his troubles, Larry would love to spend his summers with his grandparents on a farm outside Kokomo, Indiana. He loved to climb on the tractors in the combines over at Schrock's Implement Company and pretend to bring in the harvest. Life was always better for Larry in Indiana, so when he wanted to go to college, he returned there. He got off track at IU's big campus in Bloomington and moved back home, back to the farm, and attended classes at a little regional IU campus in Kokomo, a place that was focused on student success, where a boy from Mission, Texas wouldn't get lost in the crowd. Through the example of his beloved uncle Fred, who was an accomplished engineer from Purdue, Larry's life was saved, and he became the first in his family to graduate from college. A few years later, Larry Sugar gave me access to my American dream. In 1968, Larry married my mother and her two little boys, Tom and Tim, known as Tommy and Timmy in those days. In this photo here, you see Larry's firstborn, Trevor, in his arms. But I'll say this, he never made us feel any less than his own. And so we called him Dad. Years later, Larry legally adopted us, officially sharing this wonderful last name that I have. Neither my mother nor my biological father attended college, so I suppose, technically that makes me first generation. But if not for the example of Larry Sugar and the expectation of going to college, I don't know what would have happened to me. Look at that sparkle in his eyes. Doesn't it look like he's smack dab in the middle of his American dream? Given all that he had to overcome, I think in that moment, Dad thought the future looked pretty bright for himself and for his boys. But behind every college completion is a personal story. Cancer took my dad from us when he was just 45. He never saw any of us graduate from college. Now, I don't know what it's like for a daughter to lose her dad, but I do know something about what happens to sons. They tend to get lost. Another brother, Tyler, came along 3 years after Trevor, but only Tim and I ever graduated from college. And I barely got there. This college completion work is personal. I could tell you stories of feeling overwhelmed myself on a giant college campus, and that was true. I could tell you stories, and we've all got these stories, of professors who stood before undergraduates, including me, and had no business teaching. I could tell you stories about a weed-out organic chemistry class in which I got a C and decided that I was an abysmal failure and couldn't be a doctor anymore. But instead, I'll focus on a happy ending. After this speech, you probably need one, don't you? It was a salvation delivered to me by a single college professor at that same Kokomo campus where Larry Sugar got back on track years before. Dad gave me my name, but Alan Maxwell saved my life. with his fancy East Coast credentials and his provocative stint in the U.S. government's intelligence agencies, Dr. Maxwell could have taught anywhere in this country. But he chose to come to Kokomo, Indiana. Years later, I asked him why. Why come to this crappy little town where all that anyone aspires to do is to work in the auto plant, where college education isn't that valued? He answered because he said that's where he was needed most. He wanted to open minds in places with narrow horizons. He wanted to be a master professor, a great teacher, and not toil in obscurity in a publish or perish world, churning out documents no one would ever read. He wanted to make a difference. I still remember that first night class in International Relations, Introduction to International Relations, Y109. In he walks, tweed jacket, lit pipe. Man, he was pretty exotic for Kokomo, Indiana. He called his tests opportunities, and he opened our minds. Dr. Maxwell, I guess, kind of took a liking to me. He would load me up in his VW van and drive me to political science conferences with him in Chicago and Washington, D.C. I felt pretty special. I had my first Indian dinner at the Tandoor restaurant in Georgetown with Alan Maxwell. I got to admit, I was a little disappointed years later when I learned that Alan drove students around the country all the time. I wasn't so special after all. But it was just how he did his work, how he reflected his commitment. Alan didn't realize it at the time, but he represented a nameless subgroup of the Academy. We all know the Academy, right? He wanted to be in that group that was committed to just simply being great educators. There was no reward or incentive for Alan to do this. He did not make tenure because of it. It wasn't more likely to achieve tenure through this commitment, but he still remained committed to that personal mission of his. And thank God he did for me and hundreds like me. You see, that's what gives me hope in all this doom and gloom. Because I know there are thousands of Dr. Maxwells out across this country right now. I know there are dozens of you in this room. We have to empower you, organize you, hold you up, because you are our best and last hope to expand access to the American dream. Now, as president of Complete College America, I have this unique power to single-handedly bestow our highest honor in recognition of exceptional national leadership in college completion. And since this is my first opportunity to do so as the new president of Complete College America, it's kind of a big deal to me. Because I believe all hope for the American dream now rests on those committed to student success, including all of you, especially our master teachers. It's my honor to bestow my first President's Award on Dr. Alan Maxwell.
Thank you so much.
Come here. Now, Alan, come on over here. I want you to accept this award as a proud member of the vanguard of a new American Academy devoted to student success. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So if you don't like what I had to say today, you can blame Alan Maxwell. Okay, so everybody ready to saddle up? Get on that horse? Charge over that hill? I am.